How many of you guys know what the World Economic Forum is? How many of you are big fans? None, right? Well, we have someone here who used to work in the belly of the beast, and she was with foreign direct investment. And by working in the belly of the beast, she got exposed firsthand to all the corruption that's going on and became a Bitcoiner in 2016. She's on a mission to fight fiat corruption with truth. She's a product developer at Byte Federal. Please welcome. Very, very cool. Michelle Weekley, everybody. Let's go.
Thank you. I love you too. Thank you so much. Hi, guys. All right. Thank you for the introduction. I'm super excited to be here. So my name's Michelle Weekley. I'm here to give you a little bit of insight into some of the corruption that I did witness firsthand. I didn't work directly for the World Economic Forum. I worked in the ecosystem that surrounds it, so we'll get into that in a minute. I want to talk about fiat corruption and how important it is to speak up and speak the truth in the fight against fiat money, the corruption that fiat money enables, and the growing global authoritarian controls. The truth. The truth is the most fundamentally important thing. We must have the truth in order to have Bitcoin. I think this is something that not enough people are talking about. We talk a lot about freedom in Bitcoin, Bitcoin being freedom money, which it is, but our freedoms rely on the truth. So does the truth matter if we aren't free? I think you could make a case that it does. But are we really free if we don't have the truth? I don't think so. Truth, not authority, makes legitimacy. This is one of my favorite quotes. It's from Eric Kaysen. I'm sure many of you are familiar with him. Truth, not authority, makes legitimacy, except when it doesn't. Except when legitimacy is defined by governments, when money is decreed by governments, then it's all lies. The lies are, in fact, the only tool that they have to fight against Bitcoin. And there is nothing that they aren't willing to lie about. I'm sure most of you here are familiar with the growing narratives against Bitcoin. They're trying. And this, again, is why the truth matters so much. We must be willing to speak the truth. Otherwise, we will see unchecked corruption continue to take over around the world. Corruption. So that is how I got here. How did I end up on a stage in El Salvador ranting about how important the truth is? By witnessing the most corrupt corruption on the planet firsthand. This story, like all really good stories, starts on a rooftop in Bangkok. It's true. So this is literally the night that I got recruited to work in foreign direct investment. I had no idea what foreign direct investment was. I was really honest about that. I was like on my phone Googling it, and they didn't care. They were just like, you're cute, you can talk to people, go. So I did. I went to work in foreign direct investment, which I have since learned is something most people don't understand, and that's how they like it. So foreign direct investment is when one company or entity basically makes an investment in another company or entity. In 2021, there were $4.98 trillion that moved through foreign direct investment. In 2022, it was up to $5.25 trillion. And for the most part, it's filled with fraud and corruption. So I do want to make a caveat that here in El Salvador is currently attracting a lot of foreign direct investment, and I think this can be done well and positively on a Bitcoin standard. But of course, there's always exceptions. So there's exceptions in foreign direct investment. I think El Salvador is setting the stage for how FDI can be done positively. But for the most part, in the fiat world, it's all fraud. So after I got recruited to work in foreign direct investment, This was sort of the first red flag, and of course I ignored it. They wrote a bio, they issued a press release about me joining the company, and they put a bunch of lies in here. There's a bunch of stuff that's in here and it's not true. And I went to speak to the PR person and I was like, I don't actually have a master's, I wasn't doing these things. And they were like, we don't care, that doesn't matter. You look really good, we look really good. So this should have been the first red flag that I was not working on like the up and up, but they recruited me, they were paying me a lot of money, I had an unchecked expense account. You think that you're doing well. So I got into working in FDI and I really quickly realized that nothing was really what it seemed. One of the first examples of this was a flight that I took from Dubai to Bogota just for a photo op, which might sound really strange, and it was. I flew first class. I didn't include any of the pictures here of the company, the actual pictures that were taken, because I don't want to dox the investment company that was involved. But the reason that I flew all the way from Dubai to Bogota, even though we had a lot of people who were much closer, was because they only wanted people in the picture, in the room, who knew how the deal had come together. The deal had come together in a strip club at 3 a.m. because so-and-so was interested in so-and-so who worked at so-and-so's office. So, sounds super shady. It is. And then we went to China. So, shortly after I started working for this company, we landed a $20 million deal with a company called CFLD. CFLD was the second largest land developer in China. Many of you have probably heard of Evergrande. CFLD was second to Evergrande. So I was the project manager for the cooperation between the company that I was working for and CFLD. I didn't make the newspaper, but there's the original photo. At the time, I was like, it's okay, I wasn't in great shape, it's all right. Now I'm like, shit, I was in that picture. So we spent a lot of time in China. This was 2016, 2017, so this was before the meltdown, the real estate meltdown. But we were given tours of the ghost cities. There was elaborate showrooms. We had a ceremony where they gave us honorary football jerseys. They made up all kinds of numbers about the occupancy of these buildings. You can see over here, we were taking helicopter tours and just landing in the middle of the streets because nobody was there. Nobody lived there. We were told that they were at about 30% occupancy, and within the next 2 to 3 years, they'd be at 60% occupancy. It was obviously all lies. But we just all went home and pretended that it was real because everyone was too afraid to speak the truth. It's not real. It's a house of cards. Later, we saw the meltdown of Evergrande, which lost $81 billion in 2 years. The final estimates were that there was almost $350 billion lost. And you might think that this was a colossal failure. It was not. It just allowed them to print more money. And then the whole thing starts over again. So next we're going to go to MIPIM, which is a really fancy real estate conference in France. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of MIPIM. If you work in real estate, you probably really want to go to MIPIM. There's about a 5-year waiting list just to buy a ticket, which costs $5,000. This is, it's the largest real estate conference in the world that you're not invited to. So here's some of the coverage that the event gets. Anger at Kane's Property Fair, where councils rub shoulders with oligarchs. At the year that I attended MIPIM, this was some of the coverage that the event had received. And keep in mind that they are bragging here. We're benefiting from strong Chinese investment at the moment, and there's a lot of international interest in our enterprise zones. So this was a zone in the UK bragging about how they were attracting Chinese money. Nobody cares what's actually good for your local community. Nobody cares what's actually good for the people. It's all about the money. So the enterprise zones. This is really a whole thing on its own. These are the most corrupt places on earth that most people don't know exists. Who in here has ever heard of a free trade zone? All right, I hear more of you than when I normally give this talk. A lot of people, when I start talking about the things that I've seen, they bring up a lot of objections, like, well, what about the laws and the regulations? And certainly, these stories are super wild, like they just must be one-off exceptions, and maybe you're exaggerating. But the truth is, there's this whole infrastructure around the corruption. And it really centers around these free trade zones. There's about 3,000 free trade zones in the world. There's 130 countries that have free trade zones or special economic trading zones. And generally, these zones are completely or largely exempt from the rules and regulations of the country. So that's how they get away with all of this. And they meet every year at the World Economic Forum to talk about what they're going to do next. These are some of the free trade zone conferences that I attended. So fiat currency really enables and encourages all of this corruption. There's a lot of money to be made in the whole ecosystem. Bitcoin fixes this, right? Isn't that why we are all here and we are all building on Bitcoin? And it's true. Bitcoin is the truth. It's immutable and it's censorship resistant. Bitcoin is stateless. People are not. And this is why fighting for the truth is so important. So many of the people in this room are prepared to hodl through any sort of regulation. Many of us are prepared to become criminals to defend Bitcoin. But the average person is not. And while you may not be able to mess with the blockchain itself, you can mess with the people who are trying to use it. I think most of you are probably familiar with Ross, Snowden. A lot of people don't know that in the United States right now, we do have a bunch of political prisoners. Regardless of what your opinion is on the politics happening in the United States, you should be allowed to express dissenting opinions, and there are people in jail right now in the US who have been put in jail because of that. We have political prisoners in the United States. This picture's from the UK. This story kind of went viral on Twitter. This woman was arrested for saying silent prayers outside of a church. So fighting for the truth really is super important, and the urgency of this is escalating. As the totalitarian controls around the world escalate, so does the need for everyone to speak up. You cannot have freedom without transparency. You cannot be free when you're being governed by a set of laws that are unequally applied. You cannot be free when speech is being redefined daily. And you cannot be free when your money doesn't really exist. So, start being honest. First and foremost, be honest with yourself. Be honest with your spouse or your significant other, your friends, your neighbors, your employer. We look around and we see so much nonsense and destruction and corruption. And what a lot of people don't realize is we could end much of it in the blink of an eye if everyone was just brave enough to speak the truth. Defund the fiats, speak the truth, and if we're lucky, we might just save the world. That's it. Does anybody have any questions? I was sitting in the corner at a conference that I didn't want to be at in Cartagena, Colombia, and I met this really quiet Russian kid who was working on the mycelium wallet, and he said, there's this really cool thing called cryptocurrency, you should check it out. So I started Googling it, and I set up a Google alert for Bitcoin and Ethereum at the time, and I started reading everything that came to my inbox. And
Hey, Michelle, great. Over here to your right.
Hi, Bill.
Hey, great talk. When did the scales fall from your eyes? When did you decide, you know what, this is corrupt, I'm out of here? Was there a distilling moment, or was it just a gradual progress?
It was gradual. I mean, right from the beginning, right when they wrote my bio and it was full of lies, I had this like pit in my stomach. I was like, what has happened? I did not have the courage at the time to say, okay, forget it, I'm out. I should have gone back to my life. I was living in Dubai. I had a great job with this tech startup. But I thought, no, like, I must be missing something. Like, this is an amazing opportunity. So I wasn't honest with myself. And so it took a while. Ultimately, the world sort of shut me down. I ended up in South Korea with pneumonia. And so it was at that time that I said, all right, this is the sign that I've been waiting for. I can't do this anymore.
Apart from the obvious CBDCs, what are the relationships that you have witnessed between the elites that you have touched, economic World Economic Forum, etc., and the different parts of crypto industry, including Bitcoin and non-Bitcoin ones?
What have I witnessed? Like
the relationship between those running the fiat world and the crypto industry.
Yeah, I think that there is going to be really parallel developments. You know, we're developing on Bitcoin, layer 2, layer 3, and we're fighting for freedom. I think on the other side of the spectrum, CBDCs get a lot of attention. I think that the global elites will embrace technologies and some of the altcoins. But to me, the CBDC is actually not the most threatening thing. To me, the scariest thing is a cashless society. So we're all excited about technology. I'm a product developer. You know, we're using Bitcoin. And I see Bitcoin kind of like a new cash, right? But if you look a lot of places around the world, just before they try to implement a CBDC, what they do is they actually get rid of cash. And even if they did that and nothing else alone, they don't really have to create a CBDC. They can use the current fiat rail systems to control everything that you're doing. So in the United States, for example, the IRS is fighting really hard to make reporting requirements on transactions under $600. You'd basically have to tell them like everything you're doing. So I think they're not super interested in the technology so much as the control and how it can enable control. You know, people ask me all the time, are these people really that insane? And my answer is yes.
Hi there. I thought your talk was really interesting, and you're showing extreme courage and setting a great example for others to follow. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And also, I'm curious about the idea of free trade zones, etc., and how they might still be useful in the context of something like a network state type situation, or Prosperas, or some of these similar types of organizations.
Yeah, I have been following the network state. I'm a big fan of that. I think there is a use for the free trade zones and having economic zones, you know, globally to cooperate. You know, we're sort of past the point of no return in terms of society becoming a global society, and I think that that is generally a net positive. It, you know, has brought us all together here, but you know, just bringing the laws and the agreements to a more like honest place, you know, having them be in line with what the people want in terms of being represented. You can set up zones that allow business and still have values and laws and regulations that represent, you know, your country as a whole. And I think that is my time. Thank you.
Woohoo!